Welcome, everybody, to another episode of State of the Thunder. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for watching. Today's topic is primarily about the 2026 mobile roadmap. We're going to take a look of our current effort, what we plan for next year, but also specifically, how did we decide to do the things that we decided to do. Most of the times, I would say every day, we get bombarded by thousands of requests of, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you fix that? Can you add these options and things like that? It's always difficult to prioritize and identify what is the task or the effort that we should put first, and then what can we put in the backlog? What can we defer for later? It's a balance that we need to maintain between multiple things. So we're going to have a little bit of a peek behind the curtain on all our decision-making process. And then we're going to see some details, a little bit of an overview on the details on the Android initiatives and iOS initiatives. Once again, this is specifically for mobile. We're probably going to do an episode dedicated exclusively to the desktop and maybe also services for TB Pro and see. Yes, we have roadmaps also there. But let's get started. First of all, I'm going to share this very secret document that no one should look at, but it's totally fine. This is a work in progress document. Things can change, but this is usually what we do. We start with a roadmap document which encapsulate the primary objectives, and maybe I can zoom in so it's easier to read. Yes, look at me. The first thing that we have here is a most important overview umbrella initiative that pretty much spans across all the implementations and all the products that we have at MZLA. This is the TB Pro integration. You know, if you've been following any of our communication, it's pretty widely known. We are doing some pro services. The most obvious things and the things that we already released and we advertise and publicize a little bit are Thundermail, our email service, Thunderbird Send for large attachment, and Thunderbird Sync, an integration to revive or implement Firefox Sync inside Thunderbird. Of these three efforts, our general intention is to integrate all of these natively and support them natively inside all our product. There is a difficulty on prioritizing and setting a specific date and setting a specific project with milestone specific tasks for each of these initiatives, because these initiatives are tied to the completion by the services team. The services team is different from the mobile team. Each product comes with its own team, with its own expertise. We collaborate with each other. We talk with each other. Of course, we know who we are inside internally, but sometimes efforts are delayed. There's some difficulty that dates are difficult to respect because there are things like outside of our control that happen. So we couldn't prioritize, we couldn't put confidently inside our roadmap that we're going to have a full Thunderbird Send integration inside Android or iOS by the end of September. We don't have that confidence level to assume those type of dates or prioritize even. But we have the understanding that throughout next year, whenever these services are ready for stable beta or an initial consumption for our wider audience, we are going to potentially pause the current initiatives, what we're working on, and dedicate some time to integrate the services. Of course, Thundermail integration is the email service is the easiest one, with large double quotes around the parts that I said it's easy. Usually, if especially for Android, we already have a IMAP integration, so Thundermail will offer IMAP. We can integrate it properly. We still have some issues with push notifications because IMAP is absolutely terrible. But one thing that we want to explore is if we have users inside Thunderbird for Android or Thunderbird for iOS, can we do some very sensible and not intrusive design call outs to say, hey, do you want to Do you need a new email address? Do you want to try Thundermail? So these are the general initiatives that we want to put in. There are very low level initiative, especially Thundermail will offer also JMap. And if we're able to add JMap in iOS and Android, consuming it's much easier than IMAP. That's the general approach. The other two are a little bit more complicated because send integration, it means like having a cloud service, detecting the file attachment size and returning a link that users can control and share. Same thing with sync, having your account synced to an encrypted cloud storage is not easy to do, but whenever is any of these things are available, we're going to try to jump on board and expose them to the user as fast as possible.
Is this roadmap final?
Ish. As to give you like a better overview, like the roadmap usually is it starts from the leadership. It starts from Ryan, myself, a collaboration with John, and we look at the current status of all of our products, our business requirement. We analyze what brings what we think from our marketing research and then a bunch of other data points that are kind of boring to list. We try to identify what are the initiatives that will bring more users in, will satisfy our current users, and will help solidify and stabilize our products for the future. So we do a first draft, and then after we have a first draft on initiative, we bring the council in, especially during this session, season, during this current effort for the 2026, we brought the council representative for the working group of the roadmap pretty much in from day one. So they brought their requests and things that they gather from the community. We bring ours, and then we build this roadmap together. Currently, this roadmap was approved by the working group of the council, but now is being evaluated by the larger member of all the members of the council. So I would say this is 95% accurate, finalized. I don't envision massive changes, maybe some like nitpicky things, or like adding some things or changing the priority on something, but overall, this is pretty solid. Moving on, let's start tackling some Android initiatives. In the mobile team, we have an interesting situation because we are at the same time building and supporting and expanding and modernizing a very old code base with a lot of problems, but also we're building a completely new application from scratch that has no technical debt. So we're talking about the Android code base, which is based on K9, but also iOS, which is based on nothing. We're building everything from scratch. Well, no, we're going to try to use some available libraries out there. But iOS doesn't have any technical debt, so it's all rainbows and candies and everything. It's great, and we're not going to make any mistakes, right? No, it's fine. But we have this strange situation where the prioritization of things don't match across the two different platforms. It's kind of weird to say the mobile team is working prioritizing one thing on another and completely different things on another product, even if it's still mobile, because like feature parity across Android and iOS will not happen probably for a bunch of years because of this situation. But let's start with the Android initiatives. As I said, we always get thousands, maybe thousands is an exaggeration. I would say like dozens of requests per day on changing some things or adding new features or completely modifying the behavior of how things are on Android. There is a necessity of not being reactive to user requests because a lot of the times the user requests are mostly a surface representation of a much more core in-depth issue that we have in our code base, and changing those things other than not being easy, we experienced in the past few months changing one thing on a surface and break another thing on a completely different section that we didn't know were related. This is pretty much true for every project that has a ancient code base. Ancient is a strong term, but in terms of the internet, in terms of like code, something that was built 15 years ago, especially with the technology and the coding standards of 15 years ago, is considered ancient. And there are a lot better library, more modern solution and things that allow the application to be a lot more modular. So you would notice that here our first top priority is the re-architecture and core maintenance. And I know when we're going to share this with the community, this is going to be so exciting. Hey, our first priority is just rebuild it because we need to rebuild it. But it's becoming an issue. It's becoming an issue not just for the stability of the application, but also for our developer satisfaction. It's very frustrating to work on a code base that it's convoluted, it's difficult to maintain, it's difficult to fix. And when you build something new, then suddenly other three things break in the background that you didn't even touch, but it was just all so entangled and connected. It's very frustrating. So in order to guarantee a future where we can move a lot faster and be a lot more confident about the quality of our product, we need to focus on the re-architecture and core maintenance. I don't think we have the time today, but all these initiatives are detailed and split into each section. What does it mean? Like re-architecture and core maintenance is a broad term that encapsulate a million different things. Inside we have like sub pages with the split of what does it mean here? What are all the things? And we're trying to prioritize all the different initiatives and all the different efforts. And we call this like epics because the program is the re-architecture. The epics inside the program are things like global database, fixing push notification, implementing our Bolt UI. Let me tell you, and I'm going to go on record here. Uh, Google Material UI is the worst thing ever created by designers. It is a mistake. It's the wrong solution for incorrect problems made by incorrect people. Like I'm being very harsh here, but it's fine. It's Google. They have all the money and they cannot get their stuff together and they cannot have a proper UI. It's absolutely atrocious. So we're gonna jump the boat and not implement Material and implement our own UI. And Heather, yes, jump on the hate bandwagon.
Well, I have a quick question. So I think I remember when we, refactored things for Material 3, I read something about Material U, which I guess is Material 4. Are we skipping that and going right to Bolt or
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
cool.
We tried. We tried. It's awful. It's awful. The way that use it. First of all, I mean it's personal preferences, but it feels like that design was taught by people that only use a 12-inch tablet and they don't use small phones. The sizes of everything of every single widget is overblown. It's massive, massive font, massive sizes. There's a lot of usage of background colors to indicate different statuses or different sections. In the past, Material, especially Material 1 or 2, had very smart depth implementation through shadows and layerings and simulating how the light hits a specific things. And that was very reminiscent of reality. If you have like multiple layers of pieces of paper, one after another, that are slightly shifted and raised, they create different shadow. And it was very intuitive. With Material, starting from Material 3 and then moving forward to Material U, everything was flat. There are these pastel colors that don't really have good contrast. I mean, the contrast is okay, but like visually are kind of jarring. There's a lot of focus on squiggly animations that don't really make sense. It's just a lot of wrong choices. Personal opinion, but we kind of all agree on that. So we could have a whole section on why Material U is awful, but
Okay, well, thank you for the elaboration.
We want to be positive here. It's fine. We're going to do our own thing. Our Bolt UI is 10 times better. And that also brings consistency across application. If you're using desktop and then you switch to mobile, is the same Thunderbird. You don't want it to look completely different. There should be some like brand consistency and brand expectation there. But yeah, so all these initiatives are split into a lot more nitty gritty details. Big shout out to the mobile team for going through each of these and creating scope of works and analyzing what does it mean, how are we thinking to do it, what is the type of prioritization, what is the type of when is the quarter that we're thinking about delivering, what is like the potential size of these efforts. This is very complicated things, especially assuming things throughout a year and trying to plan for a whole year in terms of development. It's very difficult. It's difficult to be accurate. There are a lot of things that are outside our control that especially we build on a platform that is not ours. Like there suddenly a new version of the Android SDK, and we need to stop everything and update and support the next SDK. Or the Play Store changes some rules, and we need to follow those rules. It's always fun to build your house on someone else's backyard because if they turn the sprinklers on, then it's all fun. You don't have control over that. But another things, moving on, Heather, yes.
Sorry, real quick. Are we going to maintain like backwards compatibility every time there's a new like SDK?
Yes. Usually, yes. We maintain the compatibility until the Android maintains compatibility. And of course, yeah, if any developer of Android or iOS wants to jump in and be more accurate, because I have some information, but I'm not that technically proficient on these things. So moving down the list, another top priority is the message view improvement. Of course, users are going to spend most of their time on viewing messages on Android. We suspect, we don't have clear data, but we suspect that when users use our application, the two most used sections are the message list and the message view, especially viewing and reading emails and replying to emails are the top things that users will constantly do every day rather than spending a lot of times in the settings or customizing things. The message view and the message list are the top sections. So modernizing and making sure that those work well is important. And we know that we have some reports and issues, especially for the message view. Sometimes the message is not rendered properly, zoomed out, especially if there are some inline images or some inline elements, HTML elements that make the vertical, the horizontal, kick in the horizontal scrolling or push the entirety of the content, make it super small to make it fit. There are also some like problems that we show the attachments at the bottom. Sometimes those attachments, they get missed because we don't have any indication at the top, or we have these option present where we only load a message up to a certain kilobyte size. And this is a remnant of an old time when data was very limited. Even downloading a 10 kilobytes HTML message or a plain text message was too much. It might affect things. But we can be a lot more refined and targeted in understanding, is this user on a Wi-Fi connection or is it on a data plan connection? If they're on a Wi-Fi connection, maybe we have a little bit more freedom on loading the whole message. We can see and increase the default threshold of the message. It's a really jarring experience when you're reading an email and suddenly like half of the email is cut off and then there's a big button say load the rest of the message and the whole message reloads and you download everything. It's something that pretty much any mobile application never does. It's very weird. It's very unorthodox, I would say. Yeah, moving on, the message list improvements is similar to this. I'm going to go a little bit faster here. Otherwise, we spend a million years on each point. But yeah, our priorities are the message view, message list improvement. HTML signature is something that users have been asking, especially if we're going to implement Thunderbird Sync, having your HTML signature that it syncs across desktop and mobile, and you keep things connected. And the same when you write an email from desktop or write mobile. It's fairly important. We can sync all the settings. We're going to start a couple of exploration, actually three total exploration. JMap support, because we want to support this new standard is much better than IMAP. And there's a problem that in Android, we haven't implemented a new protocol in forever since we got it. So we don't have the confidence right now to say, yes, we're absolutely going to do JMap this year. Our plan is to explore what does it mean to do JMap. We might find out that it's very easy, actually. We can just connect it to the existing protocol implementation. Or we might find out that the current IMAP implementation is terrible and we need to rebuild it. So it's very up there. Same thing for Exchange support. We are releasing full Exchange support on desktop. Next year, desktop also includes Graph API and supporting calendar and address book from all Microsoft Office 365 and Exchange. That also having Exchange inside the mobile application allows user to keep a good ecosystem, use Thunderbird both on desktop and mobile and not needing to use another application because we don't fully support Exchange. And same thing for calendar. Calendar exploration is very interesting. And this is a discussion that we always have internally. What is the proper way of doing this? And maybe like this is a question for everybody. Because you could say, okay, I want calendar on my device and I want calendar inside Thunderbird. We could build a calendar section inside Thunderbird for Android, and you would have your calendar. So when you connect to your email address, automatically we set up your calendar, you have it there. But every mobile device, every operating system, it comes with a calendar application by default that it's fully integrated in your native operating system, which means you have better control on notifications, better control on reminders. You have all the things that fully integrate in your OS natively, and you don't have to do anything. So the question is, what would be our first approach implementation? Does it make sense to actually leverage the native operating system calendar of Android and just connect your calendar to the native operating system so it's there? Or should we create a completely new calendar section inside Android? And there are multiple pros and cons. Like the pros, of course, is fully integrating your system. You're already probably using that calendar. You're well versed. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to create another calendar. Less support because we only implement a protocol that adds your calendar settings in there. There are a lot of cons also in this case, though, because if users want, there are multiple aspects like usability, user experience, but also safety and protection. Ryan said it very eloquently. Like, we're 100% sure that Google will absolutely not read your calendar if we set up your calendar into the native Google Calendar application, right? Where there's no way that they're reading your invites, they're reading your contacts, they're reading your Zoom link or whatever other things you want to do. So there's that aspect of privacy. If we just automatically connect it with your device, maybe your native calendar device is even the horrible Samsung calendar. If anybody uses that, I don't know why, but it could happen. So if we have our own calendar inside Thunderbird for Android, that it's completely separate thing. It's private. It's encrypted. If we can make it encrypted, we can keep it separate from your operating system. Your operating system cannot read what's inside your calendar, technically. But there's also an aspect of usability. I personally have a separate calendar application on my phone that is only for my work calendar. And I have my personal calendar inside the native operating system calendar. And instead of having multiple calendars as enable, disable, I have two separate applications, one for personal and one for work. So I can manage my multiple calendars, my personal and work calendars. We don't have an answer for now. Our first implementation and option is to first let's implement support for CalDAV so we can actually detect calendars and we can set them up. And then probably we're going to reach out to the users and actually do some surveys and ask what would be your preference. Personal preference, I suspect We will need to do both and offer the option if users want to use the native calendar or use our own calendar. I dread the implementation of a custom calendar on mobile because calendars is already a very complicated user interface with a lot of strange interaction points. Doing it on a mobile device adds extra layers of complexity, but yeah, we're considering that. Anyone has any questions, anything to add, any corrections, or any personal opinion on this?
Yes, I'll second the idea of having separate calendar applications for different purposes. I've done the same.
Yeah, we know a lot of people do the same, and that's also the thing. Like in our community, in our forums, in our mailing list, we always have this double opinion. Like this, I really like a separate calendar, and then the next person's like, no, I really like it. My operating system because I use Lineage OS or I use another things that is de-Googled phone. So my calendar is completely private, and I want to use my native calendar of the application. It's easier for me. So yeah, I don't think there's a perfect answer that I will need to support everything, but it's good. Anyone has anything to add? Actually, let me do one little thing on Android. As you can see here, we have only two programs that are P1. Everything else P2 and P3. Our general approach and our understanding is because it's the reality. We cannot do everything. There are only two full people working on Android. There are other two people working on iOS, and one of these two people that they switch between Android and iOS. So the total size of the mobile team is four people. And we service almost like 700,000 user, 800,000. For better or for worse, our stats are not entirely accurate, but ballpark 700 to 800,000 users are actively on mobile. So you can see the disparity for developers per hundreds of thousands of users. We cannot just fix everything, do everything. And even if we want to, and we're very passionate about it, and we really want to ship a good product, we need to be realistic with what we can achieve. So our roadmaps are always in the same vein, and you will see this consistency as we talk also about the desktop roadmap in future episodes. They're always only two or three priority ones. Everything else is a P2, P3, P4. The approach is if everything goes wrong throughout the year, if we start getting assaulted by Android changes or something absolutely terrible happens in the code base or I don't know, whatever, just put your conspiracy theory into here about Google doing something absolutely sketchy. If anything goes wrong, our only objectives to consider this year 2026 a successful year is to just do the two P1s, the only two top priorities. Everything else is cherry on top. If we can achieve anything else is fantastic. We're doing very good and we're being fantastic, but we always try to be very realistic and we only set the priorities to the most important things that we need to get it done by next year. Heather.
Yeah, does this list of goals correspond to the idea that we'll have the same size of mobile team throughout the year, or are we going to hire and this plans for those new hires?
Yes.
That's the question.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, our dream is to expand every team, not just the mobile team. In this case, yes, the mobile team. The mobile team should grow. It's very difficult to have absolute certainty on these things. Things can change. Things can get very good. Things can get very bad. They won't get very bad, of course. But the general thing is we shouldn't set up a roadmap based on the assumption that the team will be doubled in next year. Especially, and these are probably boring information, but to hire a person, it takes like multiple months. So even if we say, okay, we want to add 4 more people to the mobile team, we need to account for at least like 6 to 7 months of hiring, because you need to do multiple interviews and you need to do technical interviews and you need to put the job description out there, and you get like thousands of applications. More than half are AI chatbot that makes our job even worse. So it's very complicated. We should always set the roadmap with in mind the current size and technical expertise of the team. If throughout the year we add more people, there's also the onboarding time. It's unrealistic to say, okay, we hire this person from day one, this person, they're just going to do all the tasks, or they're just going to be able to fix all the issues. It's a complicated code base. It takes time to get used to a team, get used to a code, and all these other things. But if throughout next year we add more people, then it's all, once again, cherry on top. We'll be able to tackle these issues probably faster. We can do some P4 or P3. There are a little bit lighter efforts, but these new people, these new hires can do. And we try to keep that balance. But once again, we always set the roadmap with the current team in mind. We don't assume anything because it's difficult to be 100% accurate. Monica.
Kind of like with the desktop app, how there were some things that we identified that, yes, we want to do these things. And then it's like, we might not have the energy, kind of people power to get to this. So will there be things that we identify, and we have an amazing contributor community on Android who's helped us deliver some things? Will we find ways to, if there are things that might be particularly good for community developers to pick up, to kind of highlight and say, hey, if there's anyone who wants to help us bring HTML signatures or other things to fruition, will we kind of try to mark that and highlight those things?
Yes, of course. The objective here, once we are solid on the planning, on the various initiatives, is to create these programs and epics and milestones, have them in GitHub so users can see what we're planning there. And we have specific labels that we're going to label each initiatives. And some of these initiatives are open to be picked up. Our general approach is we do these things in the open and we share it as early as possible, because we want to involve the community. And sometimes we have incredible developers or community contributors that they just tackle, and they're part of our community. We have the Matrix channel that is like open Thunderbird development, mobile development. Sometimes we have contributors jump in and like, hey, I saw there's these tasks there. Can I do it? Is anybody working on that? So that's absolutely the purpose there. More than happy if that happens more often. So yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Anyone else wants to add anything on the Android before we jump on the iOS one? Sweet. Okay. So as I said, iOS is a completely new application. We have no technical debt. So everything that we do now is implementing technical debt. That's what it is, right? We're going to look at the things that we did today, like in 2 or 3 years, and like, what were we thinking? It's always the same. But the objective of iOS before the end of next year is to release a first version that has a complete email experience. What does it mean, complete email experience? Is, of course, you're able to create an account, you're able to read your emails, and you're able to write your email. Anything else, like custom options or all the complexity and features that like folder mapping or other things, very like in-depth things that Android might have, will not happen on iOS. iOS, it's also an experimental field for us to try to make things simple, powerful and simple that service the majority of the users, but without adding the mindset of heavy customization that is always carried in desktop and Android. This is not to say that we're not going to offer options, but iOS as a platform by itself is a very locked in, opinionated platform. And our objective is to service the user expectation and make users comfortable with the platform of choice. So we know by looking at our competitors and looking at the type of demographic and people that actually prefer iOS other than Android are those type of people that don't want to fiddle too much with settings. They don't need to customize every single aspect of their IMAP connection, push notification, loading settings, all these extra complicated things. We can use this platform as a testing ground to offer a much more streamlined, usable, and simple experience that is easier to onboard for new user, especially users that come from iOS. They expect a different level of approach and polish. Not to say that in the future we're not going to add extra things, because we're all for user control and user customization, but it's going to be a much more granular, pragmatic approach rather than trying to add everything. So our first, of course, initiatives is account creation flow. John released a blog post in our TB planning community about the current status of the iOS onboarding first time. If you have test flight, you can test it. It's absolutely beautiful. We have developers here that are doing fantastic work. There is a pretty nasty stopgap there to enable using this is IMAP support. We started our exploration on supporting protocols through JMAP because JMAP is a much easier protocol, is a lot nicer. It handles push notifications very easily. There are a lot of nice, beautiful things, and that was kind of straightforward to implement. IMAP is gonna be tough, but of course, we had a business requirement decision that unfortunately supersedes sometimes development, developer satisfaction, supersedes sometimes also community satisfaction, which is coming from, if we analyze developers' requests and communities or our audience requests, right? Our audience is all about, let's do JMAP because it's a much more modern, open protocol. It's better for the future. It's simpler. We should support JMAP because it's the chicken and egg type of things. If large providers don't start supporting JMAP, then JMAP is not going to be adopted. But JMAP is not adopted because large providers don't support JMAP. So it's a never-ending cycle. We need to break the cycle and push for JMAP. But if we only do JMAP and we release our first version with just JMAP, 99% of the users out there will not be able to use Thunderbird for iOS with all their Google accounts, with all their Yahoo accounts, and all the things out there that just use IMAP. So from a business point of view, in order to make our application sustainable and sticky for everybody, the first thing we had to prioritize IMAP, which is going to be frustrating and it's going to be difficult, but we need to do it. That's why we had many discussions about what should we put first, JMAP on IMAP, and the decision ended up being a business decision. And that's always something that doesn't fully all the time comes across properly to our audience, unfortunately, and we understand. Our audience are frustrated because who cares about IMAP? I want JMAP and I want these new things. I want better standards. But sometimes if we don't do that, the application cannot be successful. And success means the widest spread adoption possible that we can support and we can tackle. And IMAP is part of that. Same things is Exchange. Like we don't want to support a closed protocol. Exchange is absolutely dreadful, but we will have to do it because it's a business decision. Because there are a lot of users that have also an Exchange account coming from university, coming from the school, coming from their work, and they want to use our application. If we don't do that, it's a business decision that we're making our application not usable for a lot of users, and it's complicated. Moving on from there, we also have some HTML signature. That's going to be like some easy things to implement, especially if we have HTML signature on desktop, Android, and iOS. Then with Thunderbird Sync, we can keep everything in sync. And a couple of nice little things like swipe actions are a staple of iOS navigation. Everything is mostly with swipe action, up and down, left and right. We want to implement that because it's somewhat of a natural way of using the application, and users will expect that. If we don't have those, it will look like subpar compared to our competition. And in the same vein, doing calendar exploration. Also the same question here. Maybe the Apple native, the iOS native calendar is a little bit more protective and safe than the Google one. But still, the questions remains like, what do we want to do there? And also in this case, our first approach is to first support CalDAV. So whatever we decide to do, at least we have that protocol locked in. Also for this initiative, we only have 3 P1s. And the 3 P1s are the account creation, IMAP support, and full email writing and reading experience. This is a beast. The full email writing and reading experience means everything. What does it mean being able to read your email? It means support plain text, HTML, support encryption, OpenPGP and SMIME, support loading messages, support attachments, support like inline images. It's massive. It's just an absolute atrocious thing, but we encapsulated that because that's the top program. And once again, if by the end of the year, we only do the first 3, I don't want to change the priority. We only do the first 3. We have the confidence that this is a consumable application that is a good first version to release it to the users and start getting feedback and start getting adoptions and building the benevolent ecosystem that we want to do with our desktop and mobile application on all the platforms. Questions, doubts, clarifications, complaints? Anyone wants to add anything?
I think it's exciting, and I think a lot of iOS people are gonna enjoy this. I remember at FOSDEM earlier this year, a lot of people were excited to hear it. So this is very exciting to see.
Nice. All right. Well, I would say we can call it a day. We're at the end of this lovely episode. Once again, big shout out to the mobile team for working on expanding all these priorities and writing down all the initiatives and nitty-gritty and annoying details that every priority entails. We're going to release hopefully soon this roadmap publicly on our mailing list, and we're going to have a dedicated website for roadmaps. And then, yes, we'll move from there and try to make it happen. So wish us luck, give us support, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you, Alessandro. Yay.